Yes, ma'am.
Online? Nice.
Yeah.
Happy New Year to everybody.
Mr. Dempsey. So, how Matt has been still going to school from here? Yeah, okay.
Entonces, I'm like to make it easier for, on her. Para hacérselo más fácil a la pobre.
Yeah, so we need a haircut.
I'll go to
Practicing.
I'm good with my.
No?
It just says she's having difficulty logging in, and that she's not feeling well either.
Well, then, ¿nutrición?
Let me make sure I got this clear. Let me make a quick call. Hang on just a minute. Es que ahorita de turn it off, todos se van a prender el micrófono. Test. Good afternoon, Mr. Snowdy. To log in.
Mr. Carmona, just let me know when Mr. Lira is on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Rodriguez or Mr. Snowdy. Can you say hello?
Good afternoon. Hello.
Thank you. You came in loud and clear.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Carmona, is Mr. Lira on there too? Can you ask him to like verify it's it?
Hello, Mr. Lita, is that you?
Yes, sir, this is me.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin. Before I call this meeting to official order, just remind the public that if you'd like to address the board, to please fill out the yellow forms that are located in the round table over there, and please turn them into Ms. Mary Lou Delgado before getting to the open forum section. Thank you. With that being said, I now call this Gadsden Independent School District regular school board meeting to order. Today is Thursday, January the 9th, 2025, and the time is 5:09 p.m. Ms. Delgado, can you please take roll call?
Ms. Flores,
Present.
Mr. Lira,
Present.
Mr. Morales, Ms. Murillo,
Present.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Present.
Madam President, we have established quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Delgado. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the New Mexico flag. Okay, our mission statement is the Gadsden Independent School District will provide diverse and educational opportunities that empower students to be successful in an ever-changing world. El Distrito Escolar Independiente de Gadsden brindará diversas oportunidades educativas que capacitarán a los estudiantes para tener éxito en un mundo cambiante. Okay, moving on now to agenda item number 3, Superintendent Dempsey's district updates and recognition. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, thank you for joining us this evening. Only really have one item. January is Board Member Appreciation Month, and so with a lot of help and almost completely done by Ms. Delgado, each of you have been provided a plant, a backpack with some Gadsden swag in it, if you will, and we just want you to know we appreciate the work and effort that you do, and thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Delgado. Thank you. Okay, moving on to board member reports. I'll go ahead and let Secretary Murillo begin.
Good evening, everybody. Just to say Happy New Year. We started with delays, and I know some of the kids are happy and some parents are not so much. But I am very grateful for the administration for sending the updates as quickly as they can, and for the staff working with our parents. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mrs. Rodriguez?
Thank you. Well, like Ms. Murillo said, Happy New Year to everyone. I think that we're off to a good start, even though that these few days have been quite interesting with the weather. But one thing that I wanted to mention is that I appreciated that even though the weather has been as it's been, we still managed to, well, Gadsden still managed to have the food banks, which are greatly appreciated. So thank you for all of the people that have been working hard and keeping everything rolling. So that is it.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Lira?
I do want to thank you guys for the backpacks and the recognition. I'll pick it up throughout the week, and I'm excited to see what's in those bags. Thank you, guys. That's it for me.
Okay, and as far for myself, I'd like to wish the community of Gadsden Independent School District a Happy New Year, Feliz Año Nuevo, and here's to another wonderful year of learning, growth, and collaboration. And then I do want to take the time to congratulate the Rumba class of 2024. And so I did want to make it public knowledge that I can only speak for myself, but I was not able to attend that graduation because I was sick. And so, But congratulations and to the class. And I did watch online. Awesome job, Principal Payan, and awesome job, Assistant Principal Mata. Congratulations again to that class. And then I also want to thank Mr. Dempsey and his leadership team and everybody involved, and also to the administration of Chaparral High School, Ms. Danielle Rodriguez and her administration for hosting, I believe, elementary and high school teachers, staff members gathered on Monday and Tuesday for their PLC, I'm going to call it PLC, and with the Marzano folks. So thank you so much. On Facebook, it looked like y'all had fun. I wish I could be there, but I couldn't. But thank you for all you do. That concludes my report. And moving on to human resources, that is just for public knowledge. No action is required on the board. Moving on to item 6, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we accept the agenda as is. All in favor?
Actually, I wanted to see
Oh,
if we can.
yes, that is correct. Sorry about that.
If we can remove item 11 E.
Okay, so Ms., since I made the motion, I guess.
Yeah, so we vote no.
So let's go ahead and vote. All in favor to keep it as is. If not, I'm going to go ahead and vote no. Ms. Murillo?
No.
How about Ms. Rodriguez?
I'm sorry, no.
Lira?
No.
Okay, so go ahead and make your motion
So
again.
I
Sorry
would
about that,
like
ma'am.
to make a modification of the agenda, removing item 11 E and moving it for the next board meeting as a discussion with possible action for the next board meeting, which is on January 23rd.
Okay, so Ms. Murillo has made a motion that we go ahead and remove item 11E. We're going to go, and she's proposing that we move it to the following school board meeting, which will be taking place on January the 23rd. And we'll go ahead and make a note to list that as a discussion item with the possibility of taking action. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Lira?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries, so we're going to go ahead and remove that, and we'll place that on the next agenda. Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we accept the regular school board minutes for December 17, 2024. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Lira?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. Moving on to number 8. Do I hear a motion for 8?
I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Okay, Ms. Murillo has made a motion to accept the consent agenda as is. Any questions or comments? If I don't have any questions or comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mrs.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Awesome. Okay, that motion carries. Moving on to open forum, Ms. Delgado, do we have any speakers that would like to address this board this evening?
Madam President, we have none.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to action items. This evening, we do not have any action items. So moving on to discussion items for this evening. Our first one is 11A, Annual Audit Report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Martinez will help us with this, and I believe we have our auditor online, Mr. Cordova. Okay.
Test. Hello?
Mr. Lita, is that you saying hello?
Yes, well, I can't hear anything. Is something going on? Or no?
No, we're
No,
waiting.
we're-
Go ahead, sir. We're waiting for the individual that did the audit.
Okay, oh, God, okay, thank you. I was just making sure because I thought I would froze.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're not going to be able to hear Mr. Cordova's presentation because there's difficulty. Okay. Okay. Okay, it appears that he's possibly logging in, so we're going to go ahead and wait. Mr. Cordova, can you hear us? If you can, please say hi.
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
Oh, hi, Mr. Cordova. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Sure. I apologize. I had some issues trying to log on here, so I'm sorry about that. But I think I'm on now. Can you guys see me okay?
Is there any way we can raise it? Because over here, we can barely hear. Or I can barely hear, I think.
Okay. I'll also try to speak up a little bit. Just a little better?
Yes, that's a perfect volume, sir. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Mr. Dempsey, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else before he continues.
Madam President, board members, Bobby Cordova is our auditor, and we're at the point where he was prepared to present the annual audit report for FY '24. Okay, for June 30th, 2024. Mr. Cordova.
Thank you, Superintendent Dempsey. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. I hope everyone had a great holiday season. We had a presentation prepared. I wasn't sure if it was going to be, if I should share it or if someone was going to share it. Mr. Carmona had sent me a link, and then Ludim had sent that presentation. I would like to see if I could get that on the screen. That was going to be kind of our agenda and lead that. So I can share it if I have the ability. I just wanted to.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Cordova. Actually, if you'll give me 2 minutes, I'll try to get that presentation up. Is it a PowerPoint?
It was a PowerPoint. It was converted to Adobe. So it's a full screen Adobe doc. That's all it is. And if you can just view it full screen. I believe Ludim sent it. You want me to send it to you again?
I'm looking at it right now. Give me just 1 sec.
Okay.
It's not attached. Sent it again. Please pardon the delay. It's now showing.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you for putting that up there. I just wanted to first introduce myself. My name is Bobby Cordova. I represent Cordova CPAs. Superintendent Dempsey mentioned our firm performed the audit of Gadsden Independent School District for the fiscal year 24. So the period that we examined was from July 2023 through June 2024. And the presentation that we're going to present this evening is a highly condensed presentation of the exit conference. So we had the exit conference in November, went over the results of the audit in detail, and there's a requirement in the state of New Mexico that the audit be discussed in a public meeting. And so we're satisfying that requirement and ensuring that the school district complies with the Audit Act, which requires that presentation today. So I'm gonna try to keep it about 10 minutes or so. Again, a lot of this has been discussed already in detail, but I'll field questions at the end if there's something that needs further discussion, okay? You can go ahead and go to the next couple slides. So I'm gonna touch on the timeline of the audit, just to give the group an idea of you know, how things transpired. And then I'm going to touch on some financial highlights. You know, the regulatory due date is November 15th. And so you have to get your books and records and your audit finished by that due date. And then, you know, the review process kind of happened over the last couple of months. And then as far as the agenda, I'm going to touch on the opinions that were rendered within the financials. So we'll go ahead and get started here. So again, in the summer of 2024, before the books were closed, we started, no, go ahead and go back. Sorry, this is just kind of the timeline still. There you go. Yeah, so in the summer, as a correspondence back and forth, there's a significant needs listing that we request from various departments. A lot of it is in the business and finance area, but then, you know, there's also some in the HR and programmatic as well, because we perform a single audit. That's a programmatic compliance audit in addition to the financial audit. So a lot of back and forth goes on in the summer to ensure that you guys are prepared. We ultimately did some compliance and planning test work in July, August, and September. And we had scheduled field work for September, and that's when we were technically physically out there. Our entrance conference was a little bit later this year. We met on October 1st. We kind of went over kind of the details and some of the planning and preliminary results of our audit during the entrance conference. And ultimately, the evidence gathering process continued into October after the books were closed. And ultimately, we drafted the financials and submitted a draft in October. On November 12th, we met with management and the Superintendent Dempsey. We did have a matter this year that I wanted to just quickly touch on. There was no board member present at the exit conference, and the state requires a finding for that. So, you know, just kind of want to note that, just as the board members, make sure you know, try to be involved in the audit process. Make sure you're there at the exit conference for sure, because that's where we discuss the results of the audit. Ultimately, the release and issuance of the audit was on December 21st. And the report is housed at this website, www.osanm.org. So that's where the financial statements are housed. So in short, as far as state compliance, the school district is compliant with the Audit Act. So the audit was submitted on time and accepted by the state. So that's a good thing, and that was communicated, you know, with LUDEEM after we got the release and issuance in December. There is a federal reporting component that's still due, and that's not yet been completed. And we have till January 21st. So it's 30 days after the release of the report. So LUDEEM, just make sure that's on our radar. We'll help again with that process, but we have, you know, a few more days to make sure we get that done. So hopefully next week we can go back and forth and get the federal reporting complete. Okay. Next couple slides are just some financial highlights. I'm just going to touch on this. Go ahead and go back one. So here's the revenue. You can see the revenue had a pretty significant increase. We talked a lot of detail about the changes here. The most significant one here was your SEG increased almost $10 million. And then your capital grants, a lot of capital activity during FY24. That also increased. So that was a majority of the reasoning behind the increase in revenue. Expenses is a little bit different. We explained the details of why the expenses they look lower, they're decreased in FY24. It has to do with the participation in ERB and retiree healthcare. In reality, on the budgetary side of things, your expenditures increased about $26 million, mainly in salaries and benefits and capital. But this is the expenses on a full accrual basis. And so LFC, you know, just Moody's, people that are going to look at your financials, look at it as a business, this is what they're going to see. So we think it's important. So we, you know, talk to the members that were in attendance, and Ludim kind of, knows some of the details behind it. But that's what your financials show, is the expenses did decrease, but again, it's because of the participation in the retirement plan and in the liabilities associated with that. Okay, net position, significant increase, revenue minus expenses, so the net worth increased. Okay, next slide. You did have a pretty significant issue during the year, bond issue. That's a good chunk of why cash and investments. You can see a big spike, almost $190 million of cash and investments sitting there on your financials right at June 30th. And the operational fund, pretty steady, pretty consistent year over year in terms of revenue minus expenses. You had the increase in SEG, and then also, salaries and all the operational costs in the fund. A good chunk of the increases are going into instruction. That's, into the classroom, significant increase from 22 to 23, and then even into 24 as far as dollars going directly into the classroom. Okay. Next slide. These are just a few other highlights that we touched on. $45 million of unspent bond proceeds as of June 30th. Those liabilities I talked about, they're almost $260 million, and that's Gadsden's portion. And the income statement effect was a $63 million decrease. So again, this is very, I just got to notice my mic is off. Can anybody hear me okay? Okay, okay. So anyways, these are just some financial highlights. Again, we talked a lot of the details in the exit conference. I can field any questions after if we need to. Okay, next slide. This slide is a summation kind of our audit and the communications that we talked to the members of whoever attended the exit. It specifically is meant for the board, but the audit was conducted in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and generally accepted government auditing standards. Really, the notion here is that we don't audit every transaction. We don't audit every payroll, every grant. It's done on a test basis. So there's reasonable assurance that goes along with the opinion that we're rendering. Okay, we talked about the plan, scope, and timing, which I covered. Scope was a financial audit and a single audit. And then as far as the timing, the district was compliant with the Audit Act. Okay, your accounting policies do conform to generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP. So if you compare your district to any other district in New Mexico, Texas, Arizona, all throughout the US, you do employ accounting policies that conform to GAAP. There are some estimates in your financials. We talked about those, mainly the pension and OPEB. Again, actuarial studies are done, and there's a lot of estimates that go into those. As far as, difficulties, nothing, no disagreements. I just want to take this time to thank Ludim and Erica, Yolanda, and all the team there. We put them through quite a bit. Being subject to an audit is not fun, and you guys, really come through as far as the documentation. And it's kind of tough there in October, November with a tight deadline, and we appreciate your hard work during the process. Okay, there were no misstatements detected as a part of our audit. However, there are adjustments. So you guys have your books on a modified cash basis, which complies with PED's requirements, PED's requirements. But GAAP is different than that. So there are adjustments to convert your numbers to comply with GAAP. And those adjustments are provided, and you guys review and approve those as part of the audit. Okay, and then there was no significant exposures or anything that we noticed. So we communicated that. Next slide. Next two slides have to do with our opinion. We rendered an unmodified or clean opinion on your financials. So that means that the numbers are free of material misstatement. Okay, so clean opinion is the best opinion you can receive. And the next slide talks about the opinion on the single audit. We audited two programs this year, the student nutrition program and it's the COVID relief funds. They call them education stabilization funds. So it's still kind of the residual left over from the COVID funds, which are accounted for about 74% of the total federal dollars. We audited those two programs, and the opinions that we rendered on each program were unmodified opinions. Okay. Next slide talks about findings. We did have 3 findings in the current year. There was one finding in the prior year that we followed up on, and we determined that the school district had resolved that finding. Okay. The next slide kind of has the details. Again, they're in the report. There's about 7 or 8 pages kind of relating to this. IT general computer controls and the IT environment was one. Cash disbursements transaction cycle was another matter. And then the third one had to do with the financial close process. So again, all this has been discussed in detail. Those were the issues, that we kind of found, and that you have a corrective action plan. And I'm assuming in 25, you guys will get these resolved. Okay. Next slide. I just kind of want to close with this. Over the last 7 years, you guys have called us a lot, not just during the audit. And we really have appreciated the opportunity to serve Gadsden Independent School District. This is the last year that our firm can perform the audit. You guys are going to have to find another firm, but it doesn't mean that you can't call us still. We're here to help. We train at the ASBOs, and we'll see you over there and stuff. We have to sit out for at least 2 years. So you have to get another set of eyes. So that's a good thing. But we just, these are some of the things we recently talked to you about. Continue to invest in cybersecurity, reduce the risk of a catastrophe. If you have vulnerabilities, respond and try to get them, resolved the best you can. A couple of things, we try to save you some money here. There was some client analysis fees on the foundation side. And so hopefully you kind of got those addressed, save some money for the scholarships. School sites, this is always kind of an issue. I think with cashless, it may be less of a risk, but just a reminder to the board and everyone, if there's some school administrators that are present at the meeting, that, the district has policies, and it's important that if teachers or, organizations are going to fundraise and on behalf of the schools, that they've got to comply with the policies and procedures that are in place, mitigate the risk of fraud and misuse, that kind of thing. And then reimbursements and maintenance. Our firms work close with Erica on the multi-year grants, and you guys have a lot going on. So just making sure that you don't miss any. We've done a lot of work over the last 7 years on recouping some of that money and identifying, issues, going back and forth with PED. Okay. So just in recap, on-time audits, unmodified opinions on the financials, as well as the single audit. So that's pretty much all I have. I'll stand for any questions at this time.
Okay, board members, are there any questions, comments, or concerns for Mr. Cordova?
I have a question. Can you explain the client analysis fees, please?
So what that was, we noticed the foundation doesn't have a whole lot of transactions. So, there's, just a handful of transactions, and, we do lots of audit work, we see lots of bank statements and activity. What we saw is for the year, there was about $1,000 of fees charged by the financial institution. And in relation to and relative to the activity, we felt that was excessive. Maybe there's reasons for it. And so we just felt it was this is something we bring up. Not everything's a finding, it's just, hey, you might want to check on this. And so, we're just bringing to the attention that there was $1,000 of fees for a bank account that has very little activity.
Mr. Cordova, I have a couple of questions. On this particular slide where it says other discussion items, it does say on the 4th bullet, need to remind all school sites that collections of monies are required to be registered, etc. Why is that reminder on there? Was there any findings of schools not doing this?
I mean, not necessarily this year, but almost every year there's been some matter. Some of it pertained to, minor fraud. Some of it pertain, and it just, you're not alone in this. We have a lot of other school districts kind of, and sometimes it may not be malicious or intentional. It's just, hey, I'm going to fundraise. I'm going to go raise some money for this group or this particular activity. And if there's policies and procedures that govern that, right? And if it's associated with Gadsden in any way, you just got to make sure you adhere to that. And so we pretty much always remind our clients, especially with regarding, especially since COVID, because it really shut down around 2019, 2020. There wasn't a whole lot of activities. There wasn't a whole lot, but now that it's kind of ramped back up, we've seen a lot of non-compliance and non-adherence to policies and procedures. So to answer your question, there was no particular instance that we noted. It was more so just a reminder because we see a lot of that, just non-adherence and because of fundraising and things going on in the classroom. And some people don't even know that the procedures are out there. So just a reminder, we do have procedures, we do have policies. So if you want to do something, beginning of the school year especially, just make sure that everyone's aware of those.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure. So any monies that are raised, like at the school district, at a school site, but even off campus, that is related to the district must be registered and reported, correct?
Yeah, you have policies and procedures. Ludim knows the details. And, sometimes there's separate organizations. If you have nonprofits and it's and it's completely separate, but if it's in any way associated with, just got to make sure that those policies and procedures are understood and the arrangement of what's going on, if it falls within the purview or realm of that it needs to follow the process of your policies and procedures.
Okay. And then in the beginning of the presentation, you had mentioned, I just wanted to make sure, you had mentioned no board members were present in the entrance and the exit?
No, it was the exit conference. I think there was a scheduling conflict. There was something that happened, but the exit conference is an important meeting, goes over the results. So, I just kind of flew through this pretty quickly, but it's probably over an hour and 20 minutes where we go over the details of the audit. And as a governing body member, it's important that at least, one person is aware and part of it. So, so that was, that was, no one was at the exit conference. I think Superintendent Dempsey, something like that was a scheduling issue. I don't know if you want to chime in. That's what I recall.
And I did want to ask, I know that our board members that sit on that committee is Christian Lira and Andrew Morales, and I know that I asked your permission, sir, to reach out to Ludim Martinez to ask her what happened. And so, and correct me if I'm adding stuff that's not correct. So I was told by Ms. Martinez is that invitations were sent out, and so Mr. Lira did accept the invitation, and then something about Mr. Morales and not confirming. So I guess I would ask all of us when we sit on these committees that we do accept an invitation, that we are responsible in attending these meetings, and if not, it's as easy as making a phone call, because could one of us have taken the place. Yeah, just in the future, fellow board members, if we can do that. And then I guess I would ask also, I'm not sure what attempts were made to locate individuals. We're adults, sir, I know, I get it. But, again, we have to be responsible. Do you have any questions? Anybody else that's online have questions, concerns? No, ma'am. Okay. And my last question was regarding that, because I was looking up the statute right now that talks about creating the audit committee, and I'm not sure if you would know the answer to this, sir, because if not, I was going to reach out to legal counsel as far as, can the meetings continue without the board members being there? It's just, I know I've sat on that committee before. It's never happened, but I'm just curious, are we all allowed? I'm just curious.
Madam President, board members, the requirement is to have a board member present. So it's not a meeting of the board in essence, right? It's really that subcommittee, which includes myself and Ms. Martinez. So absolutely, we have to move forward. And part of it is deadlines that our auditor has to meet. So they have to complete that exit interview and then submit the correct documentation by a deadline.
Okay, because none of this was stated on the statute, so I'm just making sure. Okay, if there's no more further questions or comments or concerns at this time, I'd like to thank once again Mr. Cordova for your time. And Mr. Dempsey, if I would ask you if you can make sure that presentation is linked to the current agenda that way. I know it's being recorded, but that way I would like to go back and see it.
Absolutely.
And if if anybody else has further questions, we can reach out to you or Mr. Cordova. Is that how, through you first?
You would probably just start with me, and if I
Okay.
can't answer it, I'll refer it to Mr.
Okay.
Cordova.
Thank you,
or
sir.
Ms. Martinez.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Have a good evening, Mr. Cordova.
Okay, you guys have a good rest of the evening. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to discussion item 11B, school calendar for 2025-2026. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Mr. Urgamath is going to help us with this item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. I'm returning here for discussion, as we do annually, about our school calendar for next year. I'm going to give Mr. Carmona a moment just to get the general presentation back up there. I believe Mr. Dempsey did give each of you a packet of some calendars and documents we're going to go over here briefly in this presentation. So just a reminder, we share this every time we talk about the calendar. Our goals for the calendar is to prioritize and maximize student learning and support our teachers in planning. And remember that the school calendar is the initial step in budgeting process for NMPED. Of course, this can sometimes change. Legislature starts in a couple of weeks. No indication there will be changes, but we're going to keep our eye on that. Next slide, please. This has been our timeline so far that we've done. Last time I came and spoke with you on behalf of the department was to share with you the results of the pre-planning survey that we do annually in November. We did get some staff and committee input after that. We developed the calendar drafts that we're going to talk about this evening. We did review the draft with stakeholders right before break, and when we came back, we are speaking with you all this evening. We're going to talk with the Equity Council next Tuesday. I did put our last 3 steps in red here because it could possibly need some adjustment. We were going to adjust the drafts again after this meeting and seek any additional input. And then we're planning on having stakeholder voting at the end of this month, but that's right when the session is starting, so we're kind of not sure on that. And we had tentatively planned to come back at the next board meeting with action. So I will share at the end. We may want to push those dates back by 1 meeting to let the legislature get underway. Okay, next slide, please. Just a reminder, some priorities and considerations as we build the calendar. I always share these. Legislature, mentioned that already, alignment with NMSU and DACC. Local regional calendar trends, which we'll see here this evening. Obviously, after we look at this and make some decisions on what may go to vote, we need to give those a pre-clearance from HR and finance. So those are still pending. And then we already reviewed the stakeholder survey results and, of course, our currently reserved graduation dates. Next slide, please. So board members that are here present, you were given a packet by Mr. Dempsey. It has a single sheet that says calendar, comparison, and parameters. And then you have 2 packets that have the Gadsden proposed drafts and some local regional calendars. For our board members at home, on the slideshow, you can access the same information. Just please note that all the calendars are in 1 packet. So the first thing I'm going to do, just very quickly for the benefit of our current board members and new board members, I'm going to turn your attention to the packet with the GISD drafts. I've marked them with a purple star and a purple circle and a purple square. Sometimes that's easier to look at than draft A, B, and C. I just want to orient you to the key that has the colors, so you'll know sort of what the different, on our calendars, what the different colors refer to. That tan color, of course, is classes in session. The ones in black are holiday classes. The ones in green are teacher professional development. So those are sessions led by our teacher leaders, our specialists on our campus for PD. Our yellow days, we have 2 of those on our calendar every year. Those are days for teachers, work days that are not interrupted by administration or any PD, so those are work days. So combined, the yellow and the green days are always 10, and then the days in session, typically add up to 180. Other things you'll see on here, the 2 blue days are parent conference days that we have. That exclamation point indicates that there is virtual learning for secondary those days and no required virtual learning for elementary. And then our last 2, the dark outlined ones you see are the early out days. And then something new this year that I'll mention briefly is one day you see in pink as a virtual learning day for all students. So as we kind of look at the 3 Gadsden calendars, just want to orient you, they mean the same thing on all 3 of Gadsden's calendars, okay? So I'm gonna, if you look at the calendar comparison and parameter, the single sheet, I want to remind you of some parameters, and I'm going to share with you first what all 3 Gadsden calendars have in common. So a reminder, 1140 instructional hours in a minimum of 180 days. Okay, that's where, remember, that conflict is with the governor. The legislature kind of said hours. The governor put out some information about days. So we have to have 180 days or we're not compliant, and there has to be at least 1140 hours for all students within there. Reminder that 60 hours of professional development for elementary and 30 hours for secondary can count towards those 1140 hours, okay? So 60 and 30 of those hours indicated can count towards the 1140. We are required to have no school on general election day. Doesn't matter if it's a national. Every general election day we have to have off. And we have to have a maximum of 4 remote learning days. Half of them have to be synchronous. Our GISD parameters, we can have no more than 190 teaching or instructional staff days working to continue early out Wednesdays, and our currently scheduled graduation dates. If you look on the table below, the ones in red are the 3 calendars that are Gadsden calendars. The first 2 calendars, A and C, so that's purple star and purple circle, the first 2, they have the similar student and staff start dates, and they have similar student end dates, okay? The ending dates in green on A and C indicate we're ending before Memorial Day. As you recall, GISD has traditionally always ended before Memorial Day, okay? So A and C are the ones that are most similar to what we're doing when it comes to starting and ending. The difference in draft D is relative to the staff and student starting date, starting 1 week later and ending after Memorial Day. Okay, and then of course the other differences are where the PD days are located. So as you're glancing through the 3 Gadsden calendars, purple star and purple circle, similar start and end dates on those 2. The PD days are spread out differently. On the one calendar B, the one with the purple circle, again, similar to what we currently have with the some differences in our planning days. And I noticed a little error on the one I printed out for you that was B. It should have been C. So I can tell you the difference. So my apologies for really messing that one up. The one that's the purple circle that says planning B, if you want to note that the Monday the 10th of November, okay, so on planning B, Monday the 10th of November, that should be pink, like on the first calendar, okay? It should be pink, it should be a virtual day. I apologize for this. And then the PD day, if you want to circle the 16th of February, that should be green. Okay, that would be a PD day. I apologize. I did describe that in writing. I just printed out the wrong one. So again, the 10th should be pink, and the 16th of February should be green.
For just
Yes,
calendar
ma'am.
B?
For just calendar B.
Okay.
Which I should have printed out C for you. But Ms. Flores, I do apologize. That is described properly in writing on the table there. And then lastly, all three calendars have in common a fall break. This is on the bottom of the parameter sheet there, what they have in common. The fall break, Thanksgiving break, spring break, all the same on all of them. Labor Day, Election Day, spring holiday, MLK Day, all the same. Parent conference days, the same. Our 2 virtual learning days for middle school and high school only, and the 1 pink day should be common on all of them. I made the error, printed you out the wrong copy. The PD days, 8 and 2 for work days, and then the instructional days and early outs. So those are things that are in common on all 3 of our calendars, okay? So again, the differences between A and B, which you have, is where the PD days are placed, having the one in February, and then the difference for the one that is draft D with the purple circle, the difference there is we're starting 1 week later, but we're ending 1 week later after Memorial Day. Okay, so those are the differences between the 3 that I put together, and I went through that kind of quickly. So I'm going to pause there because I had to correct my error there. I'm going to answer any questions you have about the 3 Gadsden drafts you've seen, and then I'll just point out a couple of things about our regional partners in education that are surrounding us and their calendars. So based on that thing I just zipped through and had to correct, are there any questions you have about what you've seen on these 3 Gadsden calendars with the...
Go ahead, Ms. Nuria.
So for D.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we have graduation the weekend of Memorial Day weekend,
Correct.
those students won't come back, right? We move it, because we're moving it for the last week, so they'll graduate and come back?
So we'll have to, we typically have a few days early release for our seniors. If draft D were to be the one selected, we have to resolve what we're going to do, for the seniors. I don't
What
have
would be an idea of the plan? You don't know?
I really don't have the greatest
Okay.
answer. The greatest answer right now regarding that, Ms. Murillo. I mean, typically we likely would not ask the kids to come back, but we do have a compliance element with the state that we have to abide with. So, we could look into that and see if there's something we can do if needed.
And then my last question, the reasoning for the virtual learning on the 10th is because of the holiday?
Yeah, so let me explain. Good point, Ms. Murillo, because I got myself all mixed up with my wrong calendars. So on all 3 calendars, both November 3rd and 10th, right? The 3rd should be green for PD. The pink should be pink for virtual learning day. Yes, that was the feedback. Those are weird Mondays that occur, in the calendar this year. And so we kind of thought, okay, we could use a PD day, right? The kids would get a 3-day weekend for that first weekend in November. Teachers would come back on Monday. The kids would be off on the 4th. So they'd, actually have a 4-day weekend, the kids would. And then we had some feedback from principals, and I think today's a good example of, it'd be good if we could all practice having a virtual day to make sure, everybody could get on the internet. Does everybody have Chromebooks? Everybody had their Google Classroom set up. And so some feedback from principals was, hey, we had that kind of Monday that's out of place there. Could we use that as a sort of a practice day for virtual learning that may come for everybody later in the winter? And we thought, you know what, that's always going to be there for us now because of Election Day. And so we thought we'd propose that as a new thing this year for everybody. So thank you. Great question.
I guess my question is, how come on the blue ones, elementary doesn't have virtual, but high school and middle school do? What's the reasoning behind that?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, excellent question, Ms. Flores. On the blue days, the reason why, typically we would love to on those parent conference days for elementary and secondary kids to not have to have school. Okay, if you refer back to the parameters where 60 hours of PD in elementary and 30 hours of PD in secondary can count towards the 1140 hours. Okay, because elementary has 60 hours, those 60 hours we're counting there as instruction as part of the PD. It counts as parent conference. But because secondary has less, they have to have some kind of school, or our calendar will be out of compliance. So that's because of that. We could have virtual days for both, but you know, the elementary kids, we can give them a day off, and the teachers, we can do that. The secondary has it asynchronous on those days to meet calendar compliance.
Okay.
And Ms. Flores, for clarification, that was an excellent question. We've this thing with on those blue days with kind of the split virtual for secondary and no virtual for elementary. We've done it the last 2 years, so if approved, this would be the third year doing that. So it's a pattern the folks are, our second year doing it, I apologize. It's a pattern they're getting used to.
Okay. Ms. Murillo, Mr. Leo, do you have any questions? Rodriguez? I don't even know what I said. Any questions from our board members online?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay. And so I'll wrap up here by sharing, you have the regional calendars that we know are out. If you wanted to kind of take a glance at them, the first two, the one with, I guess, like a brown tab and a yellow tab that I made, those are kind of Theo's two proposed ones that are out right now. There's no results on those. The one with the blue tab is EPISD's calendar, and the one with the orange tab is Socorro's calendar. What I do want to note here as we wrap up, all of our three drafts on the very bottom of the single sheet, I've showed you where we have some alignment. On the very bottom of our single sheet, our spring break does align with 1 week of all the calendars that we have from the region. Same thing with Thanksgiving break, and same thing with the holidays listed. So every calendar that's published so far, we have alignment on those items you see listed. We do not have LCPS's calendar or YISD's calendar out yet. We don't, you know, I'm trying to be in contact on the process of that because, again, as we see in our surveys, our parents do appreciate and our staff do appreciate as much alignment as we can get. We do have a lot of families that work in Cruces and people that work in Cruces, and we really look to try to have, again, 1 week of alignment with all of them. I want to let you know, it's very likely Cruces is going to have the same spring break and the same single holidays. That's been the pattern. The reason why the fall break portion is blank here is because that's an area of challenge. If you go to I think that's the last slide I have, Mr. Carmona, that says challenges and next steps on the regular presentation. The regular slideshow, please. So, fall break. Our alignment priority, when we decide how to align our fall break, we've talked as a team, this should be the priority of districts. LCPS, Theo, EPISD, Isleta, Socorro. When we kind of think about our staff members that may live and have families in different communities, Cruces, Socorro, and EPISD are the ones that are the most common. Of course, we have families that live in Isleta and Socorro, but it's less. Placing our fall break, we've talked as a team, do we want to wait till Las Cruces puts some drafts out to see, hey, can we line our fall break up with one of their items? That's not out quite yet. So the biggest, from an academic services perspective and an administrator's perspective, the one thing we're having our biggest challenge is where do we place fall break? So right now we're not scheduled to come back to the board for additional input until we approve the final ones, right? Typically we come here, we get your input, we pick 2 drafts, it goes out to vote to the community, and we come back to you for final approval. The one thing that as a team we're most uncertain about where it's going to land on here is fall break. So on all 3 of the Gadsden calendars, fall break is right now positioned the 6th through 10th of October, but depending on what we find out, the one that goes out the community might have it listed the 13th through 17th, or might have it listed the 29th to the 3rd. So we want you to know, based on, and we'll get some additional input, that may be the biggest difference that goes out to the community from what you're seeing tonight. It would be the location of fall break. And so we have to sit and problem solve that more. And so that's our major thing, legislature. And then I always like to say, in Gadsden, we have the habit, and I think it's great, of approving the calendar one time. We bring it, we get the survey, we approve it on a date, and that's the calendar. And then you all have done a great job in us not having to come back and change significantly. And so we like to try to continue that, but the sooner these get approved, the quicker the rest of the academic services team can plan their professional development. So those are our challenges really this fall break, because we really hate to not have an alignment with Las Cruces, because we have so many folks that work there. We want to be our own district, of course. We get feedback on that, but we want to be mindful of as best we can of we're part of a region. And again, those factors are what will impact the final date. We'll get back to you. So that's what I wanted to share about the regional alignment. And again, I apologize for having the wrong calendar in here.
Are there any further questions, comments, or concerns from Mr. Walgreens?
Okay. So, Madam President, members of the board, we'll go ahead and proceed with what we have here. We will decide as academic services between the three of these calendars, which two we want to put out for voting, okay? Which two we'll end up putting out for voting, and we'll work as a team with academic services and the superintendent on making a final placement for that fall break, okay? Yes, ma'am.
I actually was looking at my notes. I do have a question since we're talking about, snowing out there, whatever. How, because people have asked me, and then I've been curious too, snow days, how does that work?
Madam President, my apologies. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, that I'm going to take a little closer look at, because fortunately we have these remote days we're able to leverage that's keeping us in compliance. It's a little bit of, we exceed the 1140 hours, okay? We're kind of right at the day number, right, of like 180. So we need to go back and do a little research on when it's a snow day, is it an hour issue, right, number of hours, or is it a day issue? If it's a number of hour issue, it's not, right, if it's a number of hours issue, we'd have to have multiple snow days for it to become an hour issue. If it was a day issue, we would need to be careful and make sure, right, we use our virtual days wisely. So I don't have a full answer for you on that, but that's an excellent thing that today's events would, have more need more attention on.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 11C, Gadsden Independent School District Policy IKFB, graduation exercises. And then before I pass it over to Superintendent Dempsey, I was the board member who brought this up. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, this item, we've done a lot of work on this and tried to address some of the concerns that have been brought to us. We last year when we did this probably waited a little too long. I want to try to get this conversation out early and get it open in the public. And I kind of want some guidance from the board. My recommendation would be, let's try to get a policy, a general policy drafted and get it in front of the board. I have, what I don't want us to lose is we've verified with all of our comprehensive high schools and our Alta Vista and Desert Pride, they are using graduation contracts. So everything we do, we want to align with those contracts. I see nothing that would conflict. I think the goal being, one, we want to make sure the ceremony is a honorable event. One thing we recognized last year, and we didn't try to tackle this because we were probably wrapped up in other pieces, there technically is no requirement to wear a gown, and that probably sets a problem up for us in the future. Might want to address that now. And then I think the decoration of caps is a component that we want to allow students to have that opportunity. I believe the board wants to allow the students to have that type of an opportunity, which our principals are in support of.
Okay. No, that sounds good. At least I'm speaking on my behalf. Is the reason I brought this up is because, as Mr. Dempsey had stated, is if you read the way it is. I mean, I'm not going to go into it, but because I've done this argument before, right? But yeah, somebody can come and ask and tell us, hey, your board policy does not say, require me to wear the regalia, et cetera. So, and as far as myself, I would say that I would be in support. I am of having our kiddos be allowed to decorate their caps. So, any other questions, comments? So I guess you and your secondary team are going to be working.
Madam President, what we'll do is, next meeting, we'll have some form of a draft. I don't know if you recall the last time we went this, we had several options. One was there's one draft there that I think would meet, maybe with some tweaks of language, meet exactly what we're talking about. Really, I'm looking at maybe one, maybe two sentences added to the current policy. Very simple. And then keep in mind that as our principals have done, and I think we learned through the process last year, they're very, very well poised to manage that side of it.
Okay, and then I think again, this is me. In the past, there was this little phrase saying to be implemented, something like next year, and I personally would not want to see that.
Well, Madam President, exactly. I think we have enough time to get this rolled out with this class. I think we have several months to get everybody on page, and I think we can be poised in our second meeting here in January to put something in front of the board.
Okay. Any further questions, comments, or concerns from our colleagues watching online or participating online?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Lito?
No, President.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that presentation, well, for that discussion item. Moving on to discussion item 11D, literacy plan, Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Hernandez is going to help us with this item, I believe.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey. I'm coming before you because we now have a requirement that the literacy plan be presented to the board. The literacy plan has been implemented since the beginning of 2021, when the New Mexico PED launched a statewide district initiative for literacy. The initiative is, of course, focused on identifying struggling readers before they fail, and then supporting the teachers right through the whole process in the science of reading and structured literacy. So structured literacy is just a general term for an umbrella that uses to describe evidence-based approaches for helping students learn to read. And so it's pretty much just best practices, right? It's an integration of the evidence-based approaches, but also brain science. And so what it does is it provides us the opportunity to see how we learn to read, and it's just a really neat framework and initiative that the state has started using. The literacy plan, as you can see, it is a 26-page document. I'm sure you saw that, and so I'm going to summarize it, right? And I'll go through each of the sections for you. If there are any other further questions as you have the time to read it, because I know it is a long document and it's tedious, please feel free to call me or anybody on my team. Mr. Araujo and the elementary group is the one who works on this piece, our specialist, because it is a K-6 initiative for us in our district, right? We are integrated into the middle schools, but they have another model called the disciplinary model, and our district is a pilot for that. So we will be giving you more information on those pieces as we go. So I'll start with the section 1. The literacy plan consists of a lot of data. So what we do is we use our data, and for us, as you go through it, it's our iStation data, our beginning of year data in regards to kindergarten and second grade. And so this is the area where we look at our data, we look at the literacy needs, and we determine what our goals are going to be determined in order to help those campuses and support they need. This is how we determine our PD, this is how we determine who needs more support and all those types of areas. So if we could go to section 2, please. This is where the goals come in, and after we review the data from the iStation pieces for those grade levels, we come up with an action plan, a timeline, who are the lead people involved, who's in charge of monitoring these pieces, and then what resources are needed. And so as you review it and walk through it, you can see that it's a lot of information. The actual template is provided by the PED, so they tell us exactly what to do, exactly what to say. If you see the gray areas, that's our direction and our guide of what the PED wants us to do. One of the reasons it has to be presented to the boards now is in the past few years, not us, our district has done extremely well with compliance. There are actually districts and schools who were not doing what the state initiative was requiring. And so, unfortunately, for some kids in the state, they were not getting the type of evidence-based research practices that they should be getting. There was no PD being provided, and the state actually pays for most of these pieces, right? So in that section 2, you'll be able to see what the SMART goals are for K2 and for 3, 6 for our district, and the action plan of how we plan to implement some of these pieces. We give ourselves goals, and then we start talking about what the dates will be when we complete the assessment, for example, what kind of analysis we're doing and when we're doing it. Is it in PLC? Are we working with district leadership? Are we working with companies if we need it, for example, the iStation representatives? And so we go through different steps, analyzing, providing training. For us, the structured literacy training is the letters training. If you've heard of letters, LETRS, I can't remember the whole word for that. So then if you go into the next section is our section 3. In the state of New Mexico, every first grader is required to be given a dyslexia screener. In our district, we call it Lexercise. That's the one we use. That's approved by the PED. There's 2 options, and that's the one we use. I do want to reiterate, it is a screener. It's not to determine kids straight into like a testing type model. Our goal is to identify students who may be at risk for dyslexia, and what we do is we monitor students with those existing characteristics, and we put them through the intervention process, MLSS process for us, right? And so what starts happening is we monitor them, we review their data, we talk to teachers, we sit in teams, we start seeing where the student is struggling, and then that's when it's determined, should we refer for testing? And it's pretty obvious in some areas once we go through the first or second round of monitoring and data review, right? And so that's the area where we want to make sure that our students don't fall through the cracks, and the state has really done a good job in implementing this piece for students who are dyslexic. I know that in speaking to the special ed department at the PED level, they are working with developing programs for our students, because as you're aware, and we've talked about this before, New Mexico does not recognize that as like a disability part. So the intervention piece is crucial for us right now, and I think in collecting data with our students, that's going to help us determine that. So again, every first grade student in our district is screened for this piece, okay? The next piece, if you can see, we do communicate with parents about this piece at parent-teacher conferences so that they're aware of what is happening and what is going on. And our goal is to make sure that we are communicating with them way before, because that's our goal, right? To make sure that parents understand that our goal is to support their children in becoming and learning. If you go into section 4, this is the area about the LEA core literacy curriculum. And I know we hear a lot about the Marzano framework, but Gadsden has developed their own proficiency scales that are aligned to the Common Core standards, right? So our curriculum in our district are the standards that we support through teaching proficiency scales. So that's the curriculum. Everything else is considered a resource. Our iStation, any of our textbooks, anything that is considered support for what we're teaching. So we adapt our resources, our textbooks, to the standards. The textbook does not drive the instruction, the standard does. So what we do is we look at the standard and we go look at the book and determine which chapter meets this standard instead of going through the book, because that way we would be skipping a lot of the standards, right? So for us, that's that piece. And so we want to make sure that We are providing support in these areas, and this is where a lot of our PD comes in. I wish I would have taken a picture of our PD calendar in Ms. Lugo's office, just so you could see how ridiculous we have logistically planning for all these pieces. So that's part of that literacy plan. When you go into section 5, it's the plan for the MLSS. In the past, it used to be called RTI. And the goal of RTI in the past was, as you go through your tiers, tier 3 was special education, right? In the MLSS, it's a very fluid system. So you have layer 1 instruction, layer 2, layer 3. The purpose of having this type of framework is that you can be moving in and out of these layers at any time, right? And the special education piece would be after you put yourself through the student assistant team process, the SAT process, right? After we really start looking at all areas of a student and look at a student as a whole. And so here you'll see our goal in our district right now is to really tighten our layer 1 instruction, which is classroom instruction, right? It seems to be working because, as you're aware, none of our schools are in designation, so that's a big feat. Very proud that we are the largest, one of the largest districts, actually the largest districts, because there's 4 large districts, with none of the schools in designations. There's other districts with schools also not in designation, but they're this big. And so it's a big feat for us because in the new assessment piece, you can be in designation for subgroups. And even that's a big, we don't have anybody in EL designation. And that's, again, a lot of work done by Ms. Tarazona and her team. And then nobody in special ed also, because as we worked with proficiency scales last year and adapted some of these pieces, we saw that the instruction tightened up. And so we're hoping to see more. I'm a little stressed about it because, you know, but that's that piece. Our intervention model right now is a hybrid model. So we call it a push-in, or depending on the needs of every student, we make sure that we are really addressing the differentiation for each kid. We do use like some programs like Wilson or the Hegarty, Bridge the Gap. We also use the UFLI, which is University of Florida Literacy Initiative, but we use the foundational piece for that. We use UFLI already as part of the instruction in letters, but UFLI foundational is more about closing gaps. And so a lot of phonics pieces that are very important. And we have found, because it is a research, not me, but because it is a research-based piece, that the structured literacy approach really supports students with dyslexia or even with disabilities in reading, just because of the structure of the way you teach it, right? It's phonemes, phonics, all blending letters, all these great ways of learning to read. And there's a lot of information in this. Like I said, it's a 26-page report or plan, but it's very specific to the things the district does in literacy. Now I'm going to be on, I think I'm on section 5. That's our plan for the MLSS piece. Very fortunate that my team for that, Ms. Adriana Gaona, is our coordinator for MLSS. She's been working closely with the state and has been invited to present and things like that on the making sure that our kids are placed correctly in the layer placements, right? Are we moving students because they're really not learning something, or is it language, or is it truly a disability? And so we want to make sure that our students, you know, that we're identifying and making sure that those factors and those processes that we're using are impact student learning, and that they are moving academically, but just making sure that everything we're doing is data-driven and that there's a lot of teacher collaboration in making sure that our students are seen as a whole child, right? And so everybody should be involved, not just the classroom teacher. It should be the counselor if needed, the parent if needed, social worker if needed, whoever is involved with the student. So this is another piece. The MLSS team, we really encourage the parent participation because there's so many other factors in the academic piece, right? We talk about that a lot. If you're hungry, you're not gonna learn. If you are in fear of anything, you're not gonna learn. And so we wanna make sure that the child is progressing adequately and that we're still giving grade level expectations, but with the support needed so that they can grow, right? And then there's just a lot of meetings that we have and a lot of PD. We have differentiated instruction, the effective classroom management, the guaranteed and viable curriculum, which all tie into our high reliability schools model that we are working on. Section 6 is the SEG structured literacy allocation. And so the state provides us funding for substitutes, for example, right? It provides us funding for buying materials that are not covered under structured literacy. For us, it's the U-Fly, which has been has made a big impact on the student learning. If you ever have a chance, please go into a kinder classroom. They are starting to really read, and our first graders and second graders are really moving along. Our district is one of the few that has actually started closing the gap for the pandemic. So we have had some visitors from LFC, and we are going to have them again for, I believe it's pre-K. They'll be coming in next week. We have, I don't know if 2 or 3 people will be coming to see the assessment piece on that group. But our allocation is about 2.5 million, 2.57, which I know it sounds like a lot to some people, but when you're talking about personnel, it's not that much money. We do still cover some of these funds with operational, sometimes Ms. Villalobos with federal programs, and so you can see here where the money is actually used. Structured literacy for diverse learners, the U-Fly foundations, letter substitute coverage, and just different areas that we use for resources. Section 7 is the plan for structured literacy professional development, and you have the actual worksheet here of all the training we provide and to who. The New Mexico Letters PD is 4 sessions, 4 days for teachers. Every teacher has to be certified in this. So every grade level is now being trained, or it has been trained. And you can see this piece. Our administrators are also trained in the Letters Administrator course. They're online modules, and they are required to be completed. We also report to the state all of these pieces so that they are aware now that the districts are doing it. Section 8 is administration, ongoing leadership support, and monitoring, and that is where a lot of the job of the specialists and our directors come in regards to making sure that the feedback we're getting from teachers, that we're providing the correct PD for them. We follow up with walkthroughs. Our instructional coaches support on the campus. We support through PLCs, unit planning. And so there's a lot of areas just so that we're able to support the initiative, right? We want to make sure teachers are successful. So if our teachers are successful, our students will be successful. And last but not least, you'll see on section 9 who are the members of this leadership team. I will say that very, very proud of our district specialists and many of our instructional coaches. I don't have the exact number now, but many of them are trainers for the state. So they are trainers of trainers. And so we're very fortunate because they can train all our teachers at any given time. They do Saturday trainings if needed. We do them during the week. So there's just a lot of things that are going on with that piece. Again, this is the literacy plan. We have been submitting one for the last 4 years, but this is the first year that they have asked us to please present to the board for I believe that reason. It's a lot of information, so do you have any questions?
Questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Lira, Mr. Rodriguez?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, I do have some.
Yeah.
So I totally get Ms. Hernandez. I know that you know that dyslexia is a specific learning disability, and that it requires interventions that need to be tailored specifically to students that have been diagnosed, either school-based or maybe from an outside diagnosis of having dyslexia, that they need focus, in such things as phonics, phonemic awareness, and fluency development. So with that being said, I know our district does follow, science reading, the letters training, et cetera. And so our kids that have been diagnosed with dyslexia, they have an IEP. So yeah, they are general ed students first. So, you know, I in the literacy plan, you know, there's such programs as Haggerty, et cetera, that are being implemented that address those areas. Now, when they leave the classroom to get their, to their special education classrooms, is it more of the same, or are there other intervention programs that are special education teachers being trained on? Because I'm thinking see where I'm going? Like, my opinion is I don't need more of the same in my special education classroom. I need something different because I'm a general ed student first, so I'm getting this here. What am I getting when I go to my special education class? And then I'll end with this. And here I go, middle school and high school. I know that structural literacy is going up there. So what are we doing? Because we can't wait for the state to, we can't wait. So what are we doing for those kids?
Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Dempsey, thank you for the question. So yes, in the reorganization with special education, that has been an ongoing conversation where we would actually like to designate their own person, like a specialist for the dyslexia piece, because we understand that it's a very different piece. When they do move into their tier 3 setting, when they're into their special ed setting, we use, for example, right now, Lexia is the only other program, and we are actually looking for different types of program that are outside of the general ed. You know, to your point, they're general ed students first and always, but they need the accommodations and the modifications for these pieces. And yes, in the secondary level right now, I think we are one of the only districts who are piloting the disciplinary model, which is the reading model for the disciplines, right? And they're not in trouble, because I have had that conversation. It's in the discipline, the content area. And so the goal with the state is, because it is such an evidence-based and research-based piece, that the way they're teaching the beginning early literacy pieces, even at those levels, that it's really supporting the dyslexic student, right? But right now, we're just starting with that piece, but yes, we will be working on that with our secondary group.
Okay, so
they still do intervention, like I had said.
So you said that we are a pilot to disciplinary model.
School.
So is it at all middle school and all high schools, or is it specific schools?
Madam President, right now it's just the 3 middle schools first. We were one of the few actually, there's, I believe, there was a competitive process for the state, and the 3 schools in our district were picked, because we are so involved with that piece. Like I said, other districts had not even been doing what the state initiative needed to have done.
So if which I don't have a child in middle school, but if I had a child, or if I know of somebody who has the learning disability of dyslexia, and if I was to ask them, are you getting reading intervention, or what are you getting? Am I going to get a yes?
I would hope so, yes, absolutely, because they would be a student with the, and I would hope yes. The answer should be yes. They should be in some kind of intervention, as long as the student has been identified.
Okay.
And if not, I would like to know, right? We could be able to support that.
What about our high schools? Because, and I guess what I'm trying to say, and Mr. Dempsey, is, we do have high school students that have dyslexia, and what are we doing for them? And I get it that the research has been, let's target the little ones, but what about the older ones? And again, we cannot wait for the state to come up with something, so I hope our district is doing something, because,
Madam President, I completely understand. I know that as a principal in the secondary setting, we really are, our teachers do an amazing job. I'm hoping with the new specialist and the new structure, but in some areas you need to use colored overlays, for example, because that makes a difference in depending how the student's seeing the words, right? Because for people with dyslexia, the students, the words can be falling, the words can be jumping, the letters can be jumping, the letters can be wavy, and so there's different interventions that have been implemented, and yes, and teachers, covering up certain words. There's strategies that our teachers are using in that aspect. Yes.
So yeah, I would just hope that our district is not waiting in the state, that we are training our secondary teachers, because it's beautiful that we have letter science and reading, but it's like we have a whole group of kids that unfortunately have not been serviced correctly, and we can't wait, so.
Thank you,
Okay.
Madam President. I agree with you, yes, and absolutely, that's another area that we're really going to dig into. Thank you.
With that, I think there was no other further questions or comments. Thank you very much for your presentation, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Have a nice evening.
Okay, moving on to 11E, well, F, but it became E because it's the budget. We removed that other one. Budget preparation, committee input process, Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, this was an item that President Flores had brought to me, just for a little bit of background. As we begin the budget process, we typically have opportunities to meet with community to present, and I think this was a little bit of different of a request, so Ms. Flores, I'll let you share.
Yeah, in attending, going on 8 years serving on the board, and recently we went to the convention in Albuquerque through the New Mexico School Board Association, got the opportunity to sit on some sessions prior to the official start of the convention that addressed budget. And so, and actually one of the presenters that I sat on was actually, I forget his name, he was a former Secretary of Education.
Dr. Steinhaus?
Yes, Dr. Steinhaus, and he, he touched on budget, and so, this is not anything new that I hadn't heard before, but I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, but, I know that there is the opportunity for community to come out, and we actually have those meetings here on the board where they come and we present to them, and yes, input can be given then. But I think on a larger scale, I personally would like to see, I've seen other districts that currently, even the big district of Albuquerque, where, they put out surveys asking the public, the stakeholders, because that is their money, and to ask them, where would we like to, what we like to do for this upcoming school year. So to me, it's very important that we take into consideration our stakeholders. It's an opportunity for everybody that might not be able to come in person to those other community meetings to give their input. I think about the ladies that present or that came to, one of the ladies that came out to Chaparral High School that advocate for safety. That would be an opportunity for them to, on the survey, to voice their concerns as far as, they want to see money allocated for SROs and anything like that. But I really do think it is important that we give our community the opportunity in the form of a survey to give us input. And that's why I brought that up. I'm not sure if, I know that other fellow board members were in attendance at that specific session, so I'm not sure if anybody else would like to add any further comments to that.
So more than a comment, I would like to ask, because I know that, and I don't know if this is maybe like a council question, to allocate money per districts, per like our districts, on needs that specific district might need, because I know that has been an issue since I started, Mr. Madrid being requested to allocate money for a program in a school, and then down here as well. And so I know for city councils, they do have money allocated per district. So I don't know if that's something that we can do as well. I don't know if that's a council thing, because I know that was brought up by one of the ladies from Gallup, and they said you need to talk to your council. So,
Madam President, Board Member, Ms. Murillo, help me understand, are you talking about SCG dollars, or are you talking about like junior monies that come direct appropriations?
it was money, I do not recall what they were talking about, specifically where the money was coming from, but they said, well, if we take out, and this is what the lady said, if we take out, let's say $100,000 out of our cash reserves, and then distribute within the districts from the board members. And then I left. I don't remember. I don't remember what was the outcome, like what was the answer. But that was something that I've been wondering since I started the board. Is that something that we can do instead of us asking our representatives, hey, give us $50,000? Is that something that we can get so we can allocate to our respective districts?
Madam President, board members, let me make sure I understand. What I think you're asking, and I just want to make sure I'm clear. What I think I hear you saying is that individual board members would allocate to their own district, their schools within their district. Okay.
Based on the needs, I'm not once, but I don't know how that will work, because I know that's something that city councils, they do in their districts. But I don't know with boards, if that's something that we can do as well. I mean,
Yeah,
thinking that,
it's pretty unique. I'm not going to say yes or no. I'm going to say it's pretty unique. I would definitely want to run that through
maybe?
auditors. I want to make sure my auditor's okay with that, because here's, and I don't, here's, so as we have this conversation, I think there's one aspect that I think is very important, and I think it was said earlier by President Flores. We want to make sure that our community has an opportunity to share any needs they might have. Now, I'll just remind us, every time we do a strategic plan, we do a huge production, and we have that list. Now, that doesn't mean that list doesn't change. And so if we wanted to do some community meetings or one or two community meetings to try to gather a list, I think that would be a good thing. I think surveys are always a good way to generate ideas and thoughts. And then in general, as a board, in my opinion, and my recommendation is, we want to act as a district. That's my recommendation. That doesn't mean that's what we have to do, but if one school in our district is getting something that other schools aren't, I think we're opening ourselves up to some pretty heavy-duty criticism. It's just my thought. And, but I will pursue together additional information to see what the possibility of that might look like. We definitely can do some community meetings, and I could quickly put together a survey that you could take a look at maybe at our next meeting, so that we could eventually get that out and gather some information that route.
I mean, there's local districts too that already have it on their website, so, I mean, go out, venture, and look and see what to get ideas on those surveys. For input.
Yeah, Madam President, if you have some ideas, you know, I always want to model, just my personal opinion is, you know, and this is, I'll give a sports analogy. If I'm going to model after Michael Jordan. So if you can give me a Michael Jordan survey, I'd love to model that.
We will be the Michael Jordan. But yeah, it's always, I mean, doesn't hurt. And look, you know, as teachers, we go out, I'm going to say, like, we steal ideas, we borrow ideas, and then we make it our own. So, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at other districts that have that, you know, and getting ideas and then developing our own. And then I like what you said. I was going to touch on that, is that, yes, also in that particular session, it was mentioned that, yes, that we better see our budget supporting that strategic plan, which was, you know, where we took the time and effort to take the input of our community members. So in a sense, there's that voice already that's been given to us, and now we're going to put the dollars to that strategic plan. But in case we just left anything else out, anything, I think it's important, and I appreciate that we're going to do that. Mr. Lira, Ms. Rodriguez, do you have any questions, comments?
I just want to make a comment that I would appreciate if you could get some more information about that. If you can't hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Oh, okay. And doing that research of what it would look like if that money, as Ms. Murillo was stating, of allocating specific amounts of money per board member districts, that would be something that would be good to have that information, though I do feel that we need to consider having equitable funding for all students. So I think that, you know, creating that would open a can of worms and just I mean, again, I think we need to get more information, not that it wouldn't work, but I'd rather have solid information that will not affect the district. I think that as we're currently working, it's functioning and it's proper for everyone. So, my key word here is equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Okay, if there's any further questions or comments, thank you so much for entertaining that discussion item, sir. Moving on to item 12 is our upcoming board meetings and events. There's a list. The one thing I'll say is next January 23rd, on a Thursday, we will be having our next school board meeting. And just a reminder to our colleagues that, please, the deadline to submit items for the agenda is January 13th. If you already have an idea what you would like added, go ahead and let me and Mr. Dempsey know, either an email, text, or you can call. And then our other events are listed there. And then I'm not going to read those, but yeah. Moving on to item 13. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we enter closed session to discuss the purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property as permitted under Section 10-15-H7 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, specifically for board to discuss the sale of district-owned property. With that being said, Ms. Delgado, can you please take roll call?
Ms. Flores,
Aye.
Mr. Lira,
Aye.
Ms. Murillo,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Aye.
Okay, we are now in closed session. Folks, thank you so much for joining this evening. Be safe out there. Have a wonderful evening. Take care.